You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinezic.
Welcome back to The Buzz, brought to you by the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Chismar.
And I'm Tom Kinezic, and boy, oh boy, do we have a lot of follow-up today on episode 151. And as always, our episodes are full of all kinds of native plant facts and tidbits and current events, all revolving around ecology and stuff. But no, we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about before we get into all that.
Yes.
And that's our little bit of follow-up. And which some of it is just stuff we forgot to talk about before.
That's true. That's true. But I'm excited about there's a couple things like that you added that I don't know what they are, but I'm excited about the first thing.
So we're a little behind this would have happened 2 weeks ago, but I forgot to say on our last buzz. But we're a little bit behind the curve here as far as podcasts go, and playing with AI and in my instance, ChatGPT,
which I have now been obsessed with ever since you.
It is way more fun than I was expecting.
Yes.
And like many people said, a little creepy.
Yes,
but I figured, well, we'll have our own little spin. I don't need to just ask it and have it try and convince me to leave my wife and that and all this other stuff like it has done with other reporters. Yeah. I just wanted to ask it about native plant stuff. So I was asking it why native plants are so great and all this and that. It was actually giving really good answers, like almost better and more concise than I could give. I shouldn't say almost better. It was better than I could give.
And I know the one example you showed me, it's like, what native plant could I plant instead of this invasive?
Yes,
and it was giving like a whole list with some really great advice. I was like,
I
hadn't thought about that.
Not just like the list of plants. It was like, this is why you would choose this instead. And this is why you would choose this instead. And these are the kind of conditions it wants. Really, really, I'm worried about our jobs.
I don't know, because if you ask ChatGPT who we are, you and I are both professors at well-known universities.
I own a nursery in Wisconsin, and Fran is on the board of multiple organizations.
It says that I founded and am on the board of the Pinelands Preservation Alliance, and that I'm a professor at Rowan University.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay.
It's not perfect. It's not quite right about everything, but there was knowing a lot about native plants and invasive plants. The information it was giving there was
pretty good,
spot on. I didn't find many inaccuracies, if any inaccuracies, and that kind of stuff. But we also want to have a little fun with it.
Yes.
And one of the things I did is, well, I wonder if it can write me a song. So I asked it to write me a song about native plants. And Fran, you're not a musician.
I am not a musician. I love music, yes.
And I am also not a musician. And although I did play the mellophone and marching band back in 2 years of high school.
I played saxophone.
Yeah.
Not in marching band, but
that was, again, decades ago now. So what we really want out of this, I'm going to read some of the lyrics that it came up with. We know there's a lot of creative people who listen to this, and I would love for them to take the lyrics to this little ditty that ChatGPT came up with and turn it into a song.
Well, I want that. I want that really bad. Now, here's the thing. We're going to put this out there. Where do we do with the song once we get submissions? We got to choose a winner, but then what are we going, because I really like our theme music. Yeah. Maybe rooted discussions, or maybe special episodes, like when we do
or I was just going to say we can have it be the outro song.
That's very
true. It's like, this is how it ends.
We could play the whole song as the outro.
Yeah.
Which may be good.
Or we can just play it in the middle of episodes randomly at our whim, which is also equally fun.
Depends on how long it is. If someone puts like a 5-minute guitar solo
there was
again,
I listen to a lot of hunting podcasts. There was a hunting podcast I listened to that came up with a whole seasonal album of like Christmas songs that they twisted to make about hunting, and then they would just randomly play in the episodes, and they're pretty creative and good. But I know our listeners are creative, so I'm going to read just the first verse and the chorus.
Yes,
and then we're going to take the rest of the lyrics. We're going to post them in our Facebook group.
Yeah, I would say that would be an easy post. I don't want to put it in the show notes. I want to get people to the Facebook group, make sure they're checking it out there. So.
But I know there's a studio recording artist that listens to this. So
yes, there is.
I think they're a couple episodes behind though, so they might. Okay. We might be waiting a little while. But
I'm okay with that.
The song starts, and it goes, in fields and meadows, on hills and dales, grows a bounty of beauty that never fails. Native plants so diverse and so rare, the treasures of our land beyond compare. And the chorus is, oh, native plants, how you grace the land. In diversity, we take a stand to protect and preserve for generations to come. Your beauty and importance is second to none.
I like it.
Yeah.
I really like it.
And it actually wrote 4 verses, a chorus, and an outro verse.
Really?
I don't know how their bridge writing is in ChatGPT. I didn't notice one there, but there's a little bit of freedom of expression to whoever takes this challenge on.
I agree, and we're calling it the Native Plant Anthem, right? That was what
ChatGPT called it, and I was I can't think of anything better than that.
The Native Plant Anthem. Okay, so we want all the musicians out there. Check the. I couldn't remember the name of our podcast, the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast.
Yep.
Facebook group, and look for the lyrics, and we want submissions. Yeah, we want submissions. This is going to be a big. Do we have something for the winner other than?
That's a to be determined. We're going to make it something nice.
Okay.
I got to go through our box of swag that we have.
Okay.
And
figure out.
We have our T-shirts that we can always send a T-shirt to.
We do.
So it's going to be something. This is a big ask. So I want to make sure they're wildly rewarded for this.
Maybe we need to put together a Native Plant Anthem T-shirt with some of the lyrics.
With the lyrics on it, yeah. That could be it.
That would be good.
What if this takes off and they become like a big-time Spotify artist, or they have their own SoundCloud, and that's where it goes.
And everyone goes there to listen.
Listens, or tens of thousands of listens. That would be pretty. That would be something else.
That would be sweet.
But and then I wasn't done playing with ChatGPT. I was saying, write me a native plant movie. Okay, now write me a sonnet in the style of William Shakespeare. Write me another movie, but make it like a Coen Brothers movie. and then, what about M. Night Shyamalan? Make me an M. Night Shyamalan native plant movie. And then I really got to thinking, and we have one listener in particular who's a big video game fan and guest who's been on, big video game fan, and has actually talked about how Pokemon is a great way to get people to interact with nature and think about nature. So I asked ChatGPT to make me a native plant themed Pokemon episode.
Oh.
And it did. And I'm just reading a little snippet because it was very long.
Okay. All right.
And it was, as you wander through this verdant land, you'll find many plant-based Pokemon at hand. The Budu Bellossom. Santina's going to be mad at me. I couldn't pronounce that. So full of grace with their sweet fragrance and colorful face. The Bulbasaur and Oddish, so green and strong. Their leaves and petals protect them from wrong. The Chikorita and Sunkern, so bright and bold. Their energy and vitality never grow old. Your task is to catch them all, then help them thrive by planting them in gardens and helping them survive. You'll nurture them with love and care and watch them grow with beauty so rare. So yeah. And that was, again, it was very long. But
Santino, if you want to write a song about that, you can do that.
Yeah.
We'll accept that.
But no, I had a lot of fun with it. And it was, I don't know what else to say. It was just, it was fun plugging stuff in there. And even just doing like, what should I plant instead of this plant? Tell me why invasive plants are bad. And it was like 5 points, very succinct. Like just, it was very clear on what it was saying. So maybe I'll post some of the other fun stuff and factual stuff that I did on there as well. But
I would like that. I think our listeners would like that.
And now that I know there's Bard and which is Google's based, and then what's the other?
Isn't Microsoft using ChatGPT?
I think Microsoft like took that and now it's like they're calling it Bing. They might have bought the technology and then they're calling it Bing, and it's apparently even better than this, but it was in beta and I couldn't get access to it. So,
all right, gotcha.
So if you guys are playing with this too and you find something really funny or really cool or just really good, send it all our way in that Facebook group as well.
Yeah, I would like that. Yeah. I really enjoyed putting our names in there and the podcast to see what it said about us.
Yeah.
So, although I did ask it what native plant podcast should we listen to, and it didn't.
It didn't list ours.
Ours.
I've asked it why people should listen to Native Plants Healthy Planet, and it gave also better reasons than I came up with on why people should. But we have some other follow up stuff to go over too. One being, I just got back from the National Native Seed Conference.
You did,
and that was in Alexandria, Virginia. And I have mixed feelings about it as a native plant producer. it's not for native plant producers, and it can feel a little frustrating at times in some of these sessions because they can be very academic and very you have a lot of government agencies that are involved or nonprofits that are involved, and some of the asks that you're hearing from the business side of things just aren't very practical. The one thing that was really evident to me was there's just still and we've talked about this on the podcast numerous times, there's just a major disconnect from the people who want native plants or are driving some of the research behind native plants, and then the native plant producers, what they're supposed to do. The overall trend, I think how it was marketed, is there's like this national shortage of native plant seed. And there was another 10 plus producers that I talked to there, and like, we keep hearing there's shortages, there's all this demand, but we have warehouses and coolers full of seed. So are we that wrong with what we're growing that we have? One guy on the Pacific Coast, one guy in California was saying he has 1.7 million pounds of seed unsold in his warehouse right now. Wow. He sold a bunch too, but 1.7 million pounds. And my brother actually sat on this presentation. He gives this presentation, and then the next guy up is also from California saying, oh, there's a huge seed shortage in California, and we can't find seed anywhere. So it's like, how are they that far apart? They're California's a diverse state. I don't know where they were in the state, but how are they that far apart on communications that you have someone who has 1.7 million pounds of seed to sell? And it might not be the right stuff. Yeah. And then you have someone else who's saying they cannot find seed anywhere. And there was some market research on the East Coast, and I was just like, I had some questions about the survey they did, because I was just looking at it and saying, well, the insights you're getting from your survey do not align with the insights from our customer base. And we have anywhere from 700 to 1,000 unique customers every year. Yeah. And what they're asking us for does not align with what this the market research that was done was saying either. And so it's frustrating hearing this. I'm looking at it and saying, oh, are we really doing that bad of a job of communicating our message and letting people know we exist? Or is there something else going on?
Well, I think sometimes it depends on who has the microphone, because we may have someone that, I don't do the seed sales, but I do all the plant sales. So there may be someone that contacts us every year and says, I need Comptonia and Pawpaw, which are two of our biggest sellers, and not always very easy to grow or to have seed to grow. And every year when they call, I'm sold out. Mm-hmm. And we may have grown a bunch, but they sold really quickly, and they're like, there's a shortage of plant material. I can never get what I want, because every time I call and ask about these two things, they're always sold out. Yep. Which to them, it's a shortage. To us, hey, maybe we sold 1,000 of each. You know what I mean? Which it was a good year, and maybe we could have sold another 200 of each if we had them, or 300 of each. But we don't consider that a shortage.
Yeah, and a lot of this research is saying it's not just seeds that are short; it's plants that are short too. And some of it's ecoregion specific. There's particular areas of the country that are. I would think the Mid-Atlantic is probably doing pretty well overall. Iowa is another state in the upper Midwest tends to do pretty well with native plant availability. But you get into New England, I can see that there being potential shortages there, and other like the desert Southwest, I can see shortages there. It's but from our perspective, when we're having these conversations with our customer base and potential customers, if we were hearing there's demand for this kind of stuff, we've sent crews out. We've sent crews out to go get seed from different areas. Yeah. We've contracted with people to supply us with seed from different areas, so we could have specifically New England ecotype stuff, or Virginia was another place. We have Virginia ecotype plants. We would get seed from Virginia, actually send people down to collect the seed from Virginia, bring it back to New Jersey, grow it out, and then sell it back down to Chesapeake Bay, southern Chesapeake Bay, Virginia, northern North Carolina. Something we did and still do to some extent. When the demand's there, we do. We have the room to expand. Like, we want to grow more. we aren't seeing it on our end. And the other producers I talked to all felt the same way. They weren't. In fact, one guy I in his presentation was saying, we're calling it demand, but from our end, it seems more like desire. You desire this, but it's not coming through to us. We're hearing, oh, people want this stuff, but when it's actually cash is hitting the table, it's not what they want.
I agree. And, I was going to say, sometimes I feel like being intimate with our customer base, I think ideally most of our customers would like to care about local ecotype. Practicality-wise, though, they don't care because I don't see it specified in jobs. I don't say, hey, this – with the exception of like New York City Parks is good about this and parts of Maryland is good as, hey, the plants had to have been grown from seed, collected within a 50-mile radius of this job site, a 100-mile radius of this job site. Sometimes it's too narrow. It's the seed had to have been collected from the site, but you don't have access to that site, so you can't collect the seed. But I've had this conversation with government agencies where they're like, we can't specify that the plants come from you. And I'm like, you don't have to. You just have to specify the provenance. Mm-hmm. You don't have to say buy it from Pinelands. Say, but you want the plants to come from seed within a 50-mile radius. And there's not too many people that are going to be able to do that if that's what you really desire. But I guarantee you there's 50 times more seed coming into New Jersey of incorrect provenance than what's available. Yeah. Like here that you could do, it's sometimes price matters. Sometimes it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't recall if I brought this up when I went to Planorama at Brooklyn Botanical Gardens a couple months ago. I know we've talked about it internally with the nursery, but I don't know if I talked about it on the podcast. But I was surprised how many people affiliated with New York City Parks or some of these nonprofits in New York City, land trust, that kind of stuff, that had no idea we existed. And like I mentioned, that's a failure on us specifically me, that I haven't gotten our name out there enough, that people that were within 50 miles of us didn't even were searching for native plants, didn't even know we were there. So it was frustrating hearing so much of that, but it was also there's some camaraderie between the producers saying, well, we're all in the same boat. And another producer had a really good saying, because another part that's frustrating is you're hearing some really specific asks from some people, and it's like they don't understand the logistics behind it, or they don't feel like they just don't understand you and what they're asking you as a producer to do. And one of my friends had mentioned to my brother, actually, well, you got to remember that this isn't representing all environmentalists. This is just the ones that are here. You have plenty of environmentalists that get it, and they really are passionate, and they know it's, hey, we might want this, but we will settle for just a little bit less, because that's what the best we can do right now. So there's some really cool and intriguing efforts coming out.
But sometimes it's communication too, and who you're communicating with. There's entities in this sphere that spend more money on marketing than they do growing actual plants. And to get the word out or to make it seem they have a big voice but a very little footprint. I think sometimes, and I think sometimes it's, and I don't mean this disparagingly. Sometimes it's easy to be a little more idealistic when you don't have to be profitable.
Yes, I definitely agree with that.
Because it's, as a for-profit business, you have a responsibility.
And I actually said something along those lines in the presentation I gave. I had a 10-minute snippet of time that I got to present, and it was I had a little brief topic, and then took questions for 2 or 3 minutes. But one of the things I'd mentioned was, hey, we have 40 employees, give or take, that work for our nursery. That means there's 40 families that rely on us for not even just rely on us, rely on me to make good decisions and steer us in the right direction. And I can only make so many bad decisions until we don't have any money. We're out of business. And I shouldn't laugh as I say that, because it is a very serious topic. And it's one of those things. It's time of year. It's early in the spring. Plants are starting to move out, but not at a fast enough rate. Cash flow is a little bit light coming in. It's just how the nursery industry works. I'm on this ride down to this conference, on the phone with our banker, making sure we're going to have enough money in our bank account to make payroll that week. well, this is Monday, and then for Wednesday's payroll, I got to make sure we're going to have enough money in the account so we can make payroll, and all these people don't have to worry about their paycheck and their benefits and making sure they have the money in their bank accounts to put food on their table. That's our responsibility as a business. There's only so many risks and chances I can take in the name of ecology that it's a balance. We want to do the right thing on both ends, but sometimes you have to do the best you can do. Yeah. But you sacrifice a little off either end.
And for all the major players in the industry depends on us too, because without that, there would be a collapse. Oh, yeah. And it's very difficult in a lot of respects because in a lot of cases we get asked to help and show people how to do these things. Mm-hmm. Well, your family spent 35 years developing of their own money and their own time and effort and making those mistakes and having those losses to figure out how to do some of these things. Mm-hmm. And you can't just, in good faith, just give that away. It's worth something.
Yes.
Like, not saying that you have to ask money for it, but you can't just give it away for the sake of creating competition.
Yeah. It's interesting you bring that up because that was actually a question that got asked of our panel. Maybe it was a different presentation. I forget. But it was someone was saying, like, this is for the good of the planet. So you should be – it was with our panel because there's we talked about contracting, and which is an excellent way to partner with established native plant or native plant producers as a nonprofit or a federal agency or government agency. They can say, hey, we're going to pay you X amount of dollars for you to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And but there was some push as a requirement of some of these contracts. One of the questions that was asked was a requirement of some of the contracts that as the producer, you should be required to provide the mechanisms you use to create this. Like, that was part of it for the public good.
Yeah.
And I had the similar thought, but someone else on the panel answered, like, but that comes at a cost. Yeah. Like, it costs money to develop these processes. Yeah. And to just give them away so anyone can replicate them is tricky. It's a hard thing to do. I understand how it can be a public good. Yeah. We want more native plants out on the landscape from an ecological purpose, but we also need to, in our perspective, we also need to run a business. So it's hard. I learned from John Seymour from Roundstone Seeds. He's taught me so much, and Ernst Seeds too. They've taught me so much about native seed production and the whole market. And when I've had questions, they are pretty free flowing with information, and I try and do the same thing. But some of that, I'm talking about it there. Some of the reason they're so free flowing with information is they know how hard it is. I almost said the F word there. They know how hard it is, and they know that not a lot of people can actually do it.
Yes.
Both financially and just from perseverance. So,
and I have to say too, you're not taking business away from someone if they don't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. And no one that I can think of is charging an unfair price for the wholesale wise and the wholesale restoration nursery. I can't think of anyone that they're going, oh, that price is just way out of line. You're like, for developing something, someone could easily say, well, I developed it, I'm going to charge 5 times more. Mm-hmm. No one's doing that. It's all for a fair price. Yeah. So it just seems weird for me to hear people say, I know you can grow. I'm just going to take our biggest seller, Spartina. Mm-hmm. We grow 1 million a year. We could grow 10 million a year, and we could do it and offer it at a reasonable price because we've already figured out how to do it. It just seems silly to say, well, other people need to do it and take some of that business. You shouldn't have it all.
Yes.
I don't understand the reasoning for that when everyone's happy with the product. It's a reliable product. It's a reliable service. And it's at a good price. Yeah. Why? Why should I tell you how to do it so that you can take my business when we spent 35 years to figure out how to do it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think some of the argument there is because it when people look at it from the outside, it's like, oh, you're giving other people the opportunity to create more jobs. And instead of looking at it, well, we're also creating more jobs if we were to grow 10 million instead of 1 million. So, it's there's like I said, it was a really fascinating conference. I'm really glad I went. I feel better than I did when I went 6 years ago. Yeah. 6 years ago, I was angry leaving this conference.
Yeah.
Because it was there an obvious disconnect, and it was a group of producers came to the table for a session on private-public partnerships and felt demonized by the public sector about stuff. Yeah. And this time, it wasn't that. We didn't feel demonized as much. At some points we did, but it was, and we went in, like I was, a bunch of times I would hear things that would get me a little upset. I'm like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. I could feel myself turning red. And I'm like, I need to think about this with an open mind. And
here's the thing. I can understand this standpoint. If you want something that's maybe hard to grow or small quantities, and it's easy for us to say, we can't grow it. It's not easy. It's truthful. Like, we can't grow it, or it's not profitable enough for us to grow it. Yeah. Or we can't, it's not enough to add. Like, we do these things because people want them, but sometimes you have to say no. Yeah. That I can understand, well, this is necessary. We all want it, and none of you will do it because you don't have to do it. You know? But we're taking responsibility that we also have a responsibility to everyone that works here. Like, when you talk about what's good for the planet, like, why wouldn't you tell someone how to do it because it's good for the planet? Well, having us here is good for the planet. I can't remember the number I had mentioned, like, when we were talking to someone. Like, I've been here for 16 years. We've supplied 30 million plants towards restoration. Oh, it has to be more than that. More than that? Like, in the year, that's good for the planet.
You figure from plugs alone, you're looking at least 2 million a year. Yeah. For over, so you have 30 million plugs. Compounded
that's
another,
that's lowballing it.
Yeah, let's and then you 50. Have another. I don't even know, hundreds of thousands of containers. I don't even know it with tubulings. It's I do have an approximation. Yeah, it's probably closer to 50 million? All right, maybe 60 million over a 16-year span.
You know what? That's good for the Earth.
Yeah,
that's good for the Earth. Yeah. There would be a gaping hole should that not exist.
Yeah. Now, one of the things, and I was actually going to bring this up in the listener shout out, but I'll bring it up now, is I won't say the person's name now, I'll say it later. But during the questions of my panel discussion, someone pumped me up a little bit because they asked what nurseries and what seed producers were doing to promote native plants, and then directly asked, and Tom, why are you so good with the microphone? So which was nice. And she actually introduced herself during the break and said she was a listener, and it's actually written in before. Okay. But so I got to plug the podcast. So I'm wondering how many people we don't usually rant about industry stuff. But no, we don't. It was interesting. But I know a bunch of people, as soon as they heard the name of the podcast, went on their phones and subscribed. So thank you guys, because I know we'll get a nice bump from that conference, for joining us. We like to have discussions like this and give different perspectives. And another ask is, if you're at that conference and this is your first time listening, or you're a long time listener and you're at that conference, join that Facebook group, the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group that we have for podcast discussions, and share your perspective. How did you feel coming away from this? Yeah. Because I know a lot of people, there's things that I was energized about. A lot of people were really energized by this. It's a big brainstorm that's going on here. But yeah, from the production standpoint, it's like, I feel like I'm doing something really good, and I'm hearing I'm not doing good enough.
We're not angry. It's confusing.
Yes.
I guess is that there can be such a varied message, or
how can we perception? How can we have such a different perception of just demand in the marketplace?
And we do that by volunteering, for certain groups or certain committees and things like that. Like we try to help as much as we can, and we're not misers when it comes to it. I think if someone were to come in and have had a tour here, we're pretty free flowing on the amount of information that we provide. Yep. We can't do it for you, but we provide a lot of information, so it's not like we're hiding everything behind a curtain. Yeah. But
a couple other things, little takeaways from the conference is I brought my wife and son down, and they did some stuff around DC. They went to the National Zoo, and my wife was taking all these pictures of the National Zoo, and of my son wearing a Plant Native Plants t-shirt in front of a wall of bamboo, like a bunch of bamboo. And then again, my wife wearing his Plant Native Plants, my son wearing his Plant Native Plants t-shirt, standing in front of a mural of a honeybee on a dandelion. And she said the other side of the wall was actually the dandelion in seed, and the seed like drifting away. And I'm like, yeah, promoting the spread of this quasi-invasive species.
Have we ever done zoos as a
we have,
take it or leave it? Okay, I thought so. All right.
And another big takeaway from the travel to and from this trip was it is pear season. It is in full swing along the 95 corridor. It is insane.
I have
freaking pears there are.
My
God.
I've noticed it on my drive to and from work. I'm on Route 295 for a good at least half an hour each way every day, and I've noticed more. There's noticeably more this year than last year.
Oh yeah, it's. And if you don't know what we're talking about, because not everyone does, and not everyone's from the Mid-Atlantic, but we talk about calorie pear, and then a subspecies of that, or a variety of that is Bradford pear, and it's a plant that was introduced because it was supposed to be like the next great street tree. Ended up being a pretty crappy street tree, if I'm remembering correctly. And then
because it gets fire blight, it's messy, it gets a lot of disease, it's brittle wood, so it breaks, so bad crotches.
And then probably the worst component is it was sterile, but it actually it would get pollinated by other pears, and then could produce a fruit that could spread by seed.
Yeah,
and the birds, while it was low nutrition, didn't have a lot of other stuff to eat, would eat the berries. Or eat the fruit, with not like a big pear like you're thinking of, it's like a little tiny thing, and then go fly to the hedgerow along all these roadways or in the woods, and out come the seeds the other end, and now they're all over the place, and they're bright white flowers, and you'll see places that are just mobbed with them, and even my wife was like, when we were driving down, she's like, it is just so sad seeing this and knowing like just 10 years ago. I thought this was like so beautiful and what a great sign of spring. And now I know what it is. It's like, it's really disheartening to see how have we done this, and how many people driving along this road right now are like I was 10 years ago saying, oh, look at all these beautiful flowering trees.
Now, if I remember correctly, pears are fly pollinated, not bee. I don't think very many native bees at all care for it. It's, I think some non-native, and the fruit, I think only some native birds. It's typically non-native. It's until they're like really like soft. Like at the end, some of the native birds will eat it. So it's not really providing to that food.
People they think, oh well, birds eat it, so it must be helpful. But even I think I have seen reports from a nutrition standpoint, and they're really not nutritious.
Yeah.
Similar to Japanese barberry and some other stuff that's spread the same way. It doesn't have a lot of nutrition for our native birds, but they don't have a lot of other things to eat out there.
Yeah.
And now because this is what they are eating and they're spreading, they're actually having less and less to eat. But it's not their fault. It's our fault for putting them out there.
Very true.
And that was another point, just going back to our last thing, is one of the things we hear all the time from our customers is, I would probably say the number one hurdle they have for project success is invasive species control.
Yeah, I agree.
And my brother, walking out of a session that he heard, he was frustrated again, say it, and he's like, we're putting all this energy into this, and it's like, but we're driving by all these pear trees, like the native plants aren't even, it's not going to work unless we get these invasives under control. Why aren't we putting as much energy into invasive control as we are? Yeah. Or saying, oh, well, we don't have enough native plant supply, and I think that's a valid question. I know, and we're putting a lot of effort into invasive control, but you drive down, like I said, some of these interstates now, like this time of year,
pretty noticeable,
and it's like, oh yeah, we need to do so much more in terms of invasives. Yeah. We're just starting to turn the faucet off in the United States, where there's not going to be more of this stuff coming out in the landscape. There's so much already in these natural, I'm doing air quotes, areas these natural areas that it doesn't matter that the faucet's off. The basement's already flooded. we need to get out the wet dry vac and sump pump get this water out.
Some of the banning of I know PA, Delaware banned it, New Jersey. It's not official yet.
It should be soon.
Yeah. So I mean that helps. That's a start. If you can't sell it,
that's
you can't
the turning
buy
the
it, you can't
faucet
plant
off.
it. Yeah.
There's not going to be anything new coming out.
Then it's just dealing with it.
We gotta clean up the water. And one last thing I'll bring up in the follow, like I said, we had a whole long list of follow up today. Is we got a message on Instagram, and I saw a couple other people promoting this, but from Jared the Nature Guy, who I look him up. He actually wrote like a nature based children's book.
Okay,
but he came out with a free card game, so we're gonna put that in the show notes and put it in the Facebook group too. And it looks pretty cool because it's customizable. You can make your own cards as well. It kind of has like a template. So, but it had some stuff contributed by Heather Holm, and like it's it'll have like pictures of plants, and some of them are non-native or invasive, I should say, and then some of them are native, and it's like good or bad. And I haven't really dove headfirst into it to see how it is. Okay, but it looked pretty interesting. So I want to make sure people have it out there and have access to it. So it's literally just in a Google Drive folder. So
all right, I'm writing a note so I remember to put it in the show notes.
Thank you, because I'm not the one who does the show notes.
Yeah, I got to do it. Well, awesome, a lot of follow up. Wow, we actually spent like half of the episode on follow up.
Yeah, I figured we would. So
all right, you want to do some that's hot?
Yeah, let's do it.
That's hot.
You want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Well, mine's going to be a little long again, so why don't you go first?
All right, no problem. So mine is, I got mine from a different source this year. I saw this, I was like, what a way to highlight something. So this plant is one of the nominees for the Native Plant Society of New Jersey's Plant of the Year. I guess it was the New Jersey Native Plant Society 2023 Rare Plant of the Year. Which is Claytonia virginica variety Hammondiae. Hammondiae?
It is.
Hammondiae.
Yeah, I'd say Hammondiae.
Right. And it's blooming now. It's blooming March through April. And this text was by Bobby J. Herbs on the Native Plant Society website. So Claytonia virginica Spring Beauty can be found along roadsides and woodland edges in New Jersey. This beautiful the beautiful flowers with pink guides for early and small pollinators with pink stamens open on a sunny day and remain closed at night or under cloud cover. There are two forms of spring beauty that feature yellow. Found in Pennsylvania and Maryland is pale yellow form, variety from Lutea. The rarest form and classified as endangered in New Jersey by the USDA NRCS is Claytonia virginica variety Hammondiae. This is one of the nominees for the Native Plant Society of New Jersey's Plant of the Year. Claytonia virginica variety Hammondiae or Hammond Spring Beauty is found in exceptionally wet and acidic areas on the Kittatinny Mountain of Sussex County. This is the single location for this species, although some speculate it may also exist in eastern Pennsylvania. Hammond Spring Beauty is distinguished by bright yellow petals, orange nectar guides, and white anthers. Smooth grass-like leaves come in pairs and occur halfway up the stem. This is a low plant offering flowers on 4 to 16-inch stem. A spring ephemeral, the plant disappears after the seed capsules ripen in early summer. Discovered by Emily K. Hammond more than 5 decades ago, the naturalist noticed something odd about the field of flowers. They reminded her of a common spring beauty, yet were yellow in color. At the time, Hammond reported her findings to the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, where it was categorized as another spring beauty. Years later, David Snyder, former New Jersey state botanist, investigated further and was astonished by every bloom being yellow with no other flower color variations in the field. It was then that the Nature Conservancy took note and purchased the 77-acre tract in the 1990s. This tract is the only place on Earth Hammond Spring Beauty exists, quoted in an article for NorthJersey.com by James O'Neill on May 12, 2017. Scott Sherwood, the land steward for several preserves owned by the Nature Conservancy, stated, "This meadow is a rare inland acidic seep. The groundwater comes up out of the cracks in the bedrock and runs along the top of the bedrock. The water is pretty acidic with a pH of 5.5 or so." So I just thought that was something that you're not going to find in a garden center. You're not going to buy it somewhere, but it's being preserved, and now is the time to see it. So if you want to go see it, go see it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and that it's only in one place on Earth. So that's pretty fascinating.
What is it? The Kittatinny Mountain Range, which I believe is like the water gap up in that area.
Yeah,
so it's probably like if it's native in PA, it's probably the Delaware River, I think, divides that right there. So
yeah, but and then my plant is and I always like to do this where it's like, why are you choosing this? This isn't a big plant now. I chose Spartina alterniflora. I still am not calling it Spirabolus alterniflorus yet. And it's smooth cordgrass. Yes. And I took a little snippet from wildflower.org, and then, but I have another reason why I'm choosing this plant. It's not just like usual.
All right.
The dominant grass, this is the dominant grass in coastal plains of eastern North America. Salt marsh cordgrass grows 3 to 8 feet tall in moist, sandy coastal regions that are brackish to very salty. Its leaves are green with silvery white undersides. Flowers are 4 to 12-inch spikes appearing late summer through fall with seeds ripening soon after. Roots are deep and fibrous with rhizomatous colonization. Again, that's from wildflower.org, who is a great resource if you're looking this stuff up. But you guys probably already know that. Yeah. There's 2 reasons I'm bringing this up. First is because I got a good chuckle, and I sent this to Fran. Yeah. I've mentioned before, when I'm going to sleep at night, I put on quasi-boring YouTube videos to kind of like lull me to sleep. And,
this was pretty funny.
I saw one on Spartina alterniflora, and it was by a nursery in the Midwest, or Midwest, Southeast. I don't know what you
South, I guess
it's right on the border there. And I was like, I don't know. This is a salt marsh plant. It's a coastal plant. It has a very wide, state-wise, it covers a lot of states. Yeah. Actually, it's considered invasive in the Pacific Northwest because of where it's not native. But you can find it from Canada all the way down
to Texas,
into Mexico, really. But it's only going to follow the coast.
Yeah.
You're in the tidal zone. It's a really narrow band that it grows in. And so I'm like, why is this company or nursery in Middle America growing this plant? I don't quite get that. And then as I watched the video, I was like, well, I'll watch the video to see. And as I watched the video, I'm like, the pictures they're using aren't even of the plant. The facts were close. Maybe they used ChatGPT to make the facts. Yeah. The words on the screen weren't bad, but they were showing like pictures that were clearly not this plant. I don't know if they even had more than 2 pictures.
No, it kept rotating. But I didn't notice until you told me because I was on a webinar and I was holding the phone up to my ear listening to it and I wasn't watching it. And then you're like, did you notice that the pictures aren't right? I was like, oh, no. Let me go back and watch.
Yeah, I was pretty sure at one point I was looking at a picture of Phragmites come across the screen talking about Spartina, so invasive plant while you're talking about. And that being said, this nursery in particular has a reputation for this kind of thing, so or not being the most reputable resource. But no, it was just I laughed a little bit, but I was also a little concerned and angry because this is the kind of information that's out there, and how many people are going to watch it? I think it was only like 40. Okay, but still, it's like 40 people watched this, and how many of them didn't know? And now they're looking at these pictures and saying, and looking at where it's coming from and saying, oh, I could plant this near me. And now it's not, I don't like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
So I left a comment and gave it a thumbs down. but the other reason I'm choosing this plant, and this is probably the even longer part of this, is, like I said, we were down in Washington, D.C., and you probably remember, if you've been listening for a while, I think it was a year ago, maybe 2, I actually did a this or that article on the tidal basin just by the National Mall. And right now it's cherry blossom season in D.C., and you have all these really beautiful cherry trees that are in full bloom. It was peak bloom when we were down there, all around the tidal basin. So you have the FDR Monument and the Thomas Jefferson Memorial, and the Martin Luther King Memorial's right there. And it's not far from the Washington Monument and the other end of the National Mall with the Lincoln Memorial, all that. And what the article had said is with sea level rise, that tidal basin is beginning to flood at high tide.
Okay.
And actually, a little aside,
I remember that.
The tidal basin is a man-made structure, and it was actually a way that they could control they could use the tide to control the water and selectively release the water back in the Potomac River. It was just brackish at that point. Selectively release at such a velocity, it would clear out the silt from the waterway and keep it navigable without having to dredge it, which I didn't know until today, which was really fascinating. But anyway, with sea level rise, it's actually flooding going up over these seawalls that make up the basin, and then causing a lot of sediment and erosion on the banks, and actually uncovering the roots of a lot of these cherry trees, which are not salt tolerant, and this is brackish water. So it's killing cherry trees in this process.
Because all that salt is being not just washing over the roots, but it's being contained by that soil.
Yeah, it's being left there as the water recedes. A lot of the salt stays, and then as the water evaporates, it really makes it salty. So there was a noticeable amount of dead or dying cherry trees, and then an added byproduct of this is because you have flooded portions of the walkway. People are now going off path, walking through the cherry trees, compacting the soil, making a hard pan so the water's not going to penetrate, which is also killing the cherry trees. And it's just I was proud of myself because as we're walking around, I'm telling my wife all this, and then we walk past a sign that's saying all this same stuff. And I'm like, you didn't need that sign. You had me. You had a tour guide. and
that's awesome.
So, but it was just really, I talked about it and some of the solutions for what they could do there. But it was really interesting to see it. And it was another one of those interesting things where I'm here looking at all this stuff from the ecological lens and saying, well, it's not a native plant, but you have erosion issues and salt issues. And like you're watching these trees die, and you're just thinking, how many other people are noticing this as they're like trying to climb on the limbs and shaking the branch so all the petals fall out so they can get the perfect picture and all this stuff. Like, I was just thinking, like, how many people actually realize that this is happening?
Yeah.
Even though there's signage there saying it's happening. How many people are actually like paying attention and realizing, one, that's not even a native plant, but two, all this other stuff is compounding there. And but one of the proposals is actually they put a call out for a proposal on what to do there. One of the proposals, a lot of them were to incorporate native plants, but one was actually to turn it into a salt marsh.
Okay.
So that's one of the key components of salt marshes are Spartina alterniflora, and that is why I chose Spartina alterniflora, so I could tell you about all this flooding in the National Mall that I just saw, and I have a video I made about it too that'll come out on our Native Plants Healthy Planet Instagram soon.
Looking forward to that.
So, yeah,
that's awesome.
Yep,
awesome, very cool. I'm glad you were able to see that firsthand and take advantage of that moment too to be able to take the video.
Yeah, my wife was then taking videos of me to put on Influencers in the Wild or whatever that page is called. So
cool.
It was really interesting. So you want to get into our botany-based current events?
Yes, let's do it. So on the last buzz, I had an article about how invasives are outnumbering natives in England and Ireland, and you had an article about a new take on lawns, and we have a winner, and the winner is, I guess I have to, you, Tom. Tom won 14-7. That's a good win. But there were a lot of comments. Mm-hmm. A lot of people were weighing in. A lot of people were very passionate about both, and I like that when they have trouble making a choice. So a lot of people saying they wish they could vote for both, but they didn't.
Because we eliminate that option.
No, it's a competition. So you get to choose if you'd like to go first or second.
Fran, I was going to say I'll let you go first, but I'm just scrolling ahead here and seeing how long this article is. I don't know if I can let you do this to the people.
There's a space after every sentence. I don't know
Fran, this is...
It's not that... If you were to condense it, it's probably not that long. I'll read it fast. I don't know that I'm going to read it all.
1, 2, 3...
4 pages?
4... 5 and a half.
5.5. All right.
5.5. Yeah, there are some extra spaces, but I don't think there's 3 pages of spaces.
No, I'll read quickly. So the name of my article is "Once Controversial Highway Program is Now a Mass Success Story" by Casey Mahaffey, and was first shown in Columbia Insight, or it's on columbiainsight.org website. When Josh Zylstra saw the video clip of a cougar sauntering through the deep snow at the exit of a wildlife crossing on Washington's Snoqualmie Pass on January 2nd, he rushed it off to a colleague to post on Twitter and watched the excitement unfold. As a biologist for the Washington State Department of Transportation, it's part of Zylstra's job to look through the thousands of video clips that come to his inbox annually for motion sensor cameras set up at 11 wildlife crossings on a 7-mile stretch of Interstate 90. Last year, there were close to 5,000 crossings, mostly deer, elk, coyote, and a multitude of smaller animals that are snowshoe hare-sized or larger. But so far, the cameras have captured only one cougar using the wildlife crossing on this major east-west highway. It was very exciting to see that. It's not something we normally see, said Zylstra of the cougar crossing. He knows by following the research done in Canada's Banff National Park, where there are 55 crossings and 50 miles of the Trans-Canada Highway, that it takes some animals years to get used to new wildlife crossings. It appears that cougars living near I-90 are becoming more accustomed to these man-made structures that, when combined with the appropriate fencing, help wildlife travel safely across roads and highways without being hit by a vehicle. When the I-90 Wildlife Corridor campaign kicked off in Washington in 2000, the project was controversial because of its high cost and questions about the effectiveness of crossings. The structures alone range from $500,000 to $6 million each. But they're now widely supported as the best way to reduce collisions and prevent unnecessary injuries and deaths to both animals and humans, not to mention the cost of damage to vehicles. A recent Washington State University study found that on average, the crossings prevent 1 to 3 wildlife vehicle collisions per mile each year. To wildlife advocates, the crossings are also important for connectivity. They allow wild animals to travel from winter to summer ranges or to make their daily trek to and from watering holes, and help prevent populations from becoming genetically isolated. Now, with the climate crisis impacting wildlife habitat, the wildlife crossings are being seen as a vital tool to help wild animals be more resilient to the changes. According to the Center for Biological Diversity, habitat loss and fragmentation are the primary drivers of the massive extinction expected to come with climate change. Roads and poorly planned development have profoundly negative impacts on biodiversity and ecosystem function, both of which are deteriorating worldwide, the Center for Biological Diversity says. Roadkill numbers demonstrate the need for improved connectivity. For example, traffic is estimated to kill millions, if not billions, of animals on U.S. roads every year. On February 14th, the Center for Large Landscape Conservation, more than a dozen other organizations, went a step further, issuing a statement urging government officials to consider climate change in the design of wildlife crossings. As effective as wildlife crossings can be, their siting and design too often fail to account for climate impacts. Incorporating these considerations is increasingly important to support climate-driven wildlife movements and range shifts, their statement says. Once they were shown to be effective, some western states quickly embraced the wildlife crossings. According to the Oregon Department of Transportation, Colorado has 69 wildlife crossings, California and Utah each have 50, and Washington and Nevada have close to 24 each. Oregon is lacking with just 6. The Wildlands Network report that Oregon drivers have a 1 in 180 chance of hitting an animal, the highest likelihood among West Coast states. This session of Oregon legislature is considering House Bill 2999, which would establish a program to reduce wildlife vehicular collisions, including feasibility studies and plans that may include wildlife crossings and roadway fencing. Sydney Bowman, ODOT's Wildlife Passage Program leader, says Oregon drivers hit about 6,500 animals every year. The vast majority are deer and elk, but bear and cougars are also struck. Smaller animals aren't generally recorded. ODOT has developed a map to pinpoint the areas where animals are most often struck. The agency has also completed 5 undercrossings on Highway 97 south of Bend, and wildlife collisions there have dropped by 86%. But Bowman says the state hasn't yet determined what projects to do next, partly because of the many complexities. Along with the extensive fencing, each project involves working with landowners on both sides of the roadway and determining whether a more costly overcrossing is needed or undercrossing will do. In addition to animals, people have been utilizing the Highway 97 crossings, which can deter wildlife, yet creating another consideration for future projects. We've learned a lot from the projects we've done, Bowman said. High cost has been the biggest impediment of building more wildlife crossings, but that's changing. Last year, Oregon legislature allocated $7 million in general funds to be invested in wildlife corridor projects. ODOT is hoping much of the allocation can be used as matching funds to get larger grants through a new federal program. The Wildlife Crossing Pilot Program will spend $350 million over the next 5 years to help fund and design construction wildlife crossings across the country. All right, how many pages do I have left here? Too many. Two. I'm only halfway done. Yeah. So let me see. I'm going to just scroll to the bottom a little bit. Let me see here.
Meanwhile, I got my computer cord stuck in my wheel of the chair.
No problem. So Conservation Northwest has also led efforts to establish safe wildlife crossings along I-90 in Washington, which is now hugely supported by local organizations, government agencies, and private citizens. About half of the project, which envisions 24 to 25 crossings along a 15-mile stretch of the highway, is complete. The next major project is another overcrossing near Easton, scheduled for construction in the next couple of years. Zylstra, the WSDOT biologist, noted that last summer one of his cameras captured a moose traveling from the North Cascade Range to the south. Then in December, a moose was documented for the first time at Mount Rainier National Park. It's highly likely the detected moose is the same moose that showed up in Josh's videos using one of the I-90 crossing structures. Let's see. Without crossing structures on an I-90, this historic event may not have happened. Garvey Dardis says connectivity is important for genetic exchange and variability, which is critical to the long-term viability of a species and resilience to changes in the environment. She's excited about WSDOT's plans for new wildlife bridge and 3 large undercrossings that will reconnect populations of mountain goats that have been isolated from each other because of the highway. Citizens who follow WSDOT's Snoqualmie Pass site are also enthusiastic about the crossings. When the video of the cougar crossing was posted, it generated dozens of responses, along with several questions about the kinds and numbers of wildlife using the crossing. So that's something that we've talked about. It's very expensive. Like you've talked about it as far as fragmentation and isolation and what that does to populations, and it decreases the numbers as far as their ability to mate and reproduce. Yeah. It's just nice to say. I don't know if you've seen pictures. When I believe there's pictures in the article with the link when you go to in the show notes, that some of these are pretty impressive. Like it looks like you're walking through major
overpasses, and you would never know as that.
You were over a highway.
Other than the noise of all the cars, you wouldn't know that you're over a highway. They're like football fields wide in some areas. They're really, really impressive.
But the fact that it's reconnecting like the moose at Mount Rainier, big deal, and we'll see if that continues. If it's
these wildlife corridors around our infrastructure are really important, and they can often be as simple as like a little culvert.
Yeah.
I know there's some on the Atlantic City Expressway that are put in like that, where it's just little like underpasses, and it's just a small little culvert so the turtles can go back and forth. And other stuff uses as well, but that was like the main focus. Was they have some species of turtle that's part of the migration. So hey, this is a way for them to get through, and they track and So it's pretty interesting, the whole concept, and we're finding it's more and more important, and there's now legislation at work to create more of this, which is all across the country, which is super important.
And a lot of what I skipped was talking a little bit more about the legislation in all these states and the success projects. Like what it was, like why it was a failure earlier thought of as just the initial cost. And it took some time for the animals to really take benefit of it. So, but now it's nice to see that it was there long enough, maintained long enough after the investment, that they're seeing such good signs that they're willing to put more money towards it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, what do you have?
Mine was actually sent to us on Instagram. Through a message on Instagram by Branda Lynn, and I saved it for myself. I did not share it with you, Fran.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't know anything about that.
And it's called How Climate Change is Thrown Off Key Timing for Wildflowers and Trees in Spring. She actually said, hey, you guys have probably seen this already. But if you hadn't, I just want to share it. I'm like, oh, yeah, I hadn't seen this. And it's pretty fascinating. Being considerate of everyone else's time, I snipped this down. Thank you. If you skipped ahead, here's where you should stop and start listening again.
This is where we need the new chapter function that they just rolled out for the podcast.
I basically took a couple snippets. There's a lot more to the article. I tried to pick out some of the more fun to read parts, and definitely picked out all the big words I wasn't going to be able to pronounce right. No, I wish I did that because I'm seeing a couple already. But like we always do, I'm going to read a little bit, give some of my feedback and thoughts from an unscientific lens. But starting now, for short-lived spring wildflowers such as wood anemone and Dutchman's breeches.
You didn't say the botanical.
I did not. I skipped over.
All right, anemone quinquefolia, and Dicentra cucularia.
Yeah.
All right.
I was for time-saving measures, friend. These fleeting plants, known as ephemerals, grow in temperate forests around the world, leafing out and flowering early in the spring before the trees towering above them leaf out. Emerge too early and it will still be winter. Emerge too late and it will still be too shady. And it will be too shady under the forest canopy and essential photosynthesis to happen. Over their evolutionary history, these plants have figured out the best time for their survival, but climate change is altering spring growth conditions and plant life is changing along with it. There are many examples of plants shifting flowering time in response to warming temperatures, such as cherry blossoms opening earlier and earlier each year. However, when one part of the ecosystem shifts, with all the other organisms that depend on it successfully shift too. Or will they be out of luck? And what if interconnected species respond to change at different rates, leading to disruptions in long-standing ecological relationships? Researchers have been asking these types of questions about phenology, which is the timing of biological events related to climate, for years, but most studies have focused on plant-animal interactions like pollinators coming out at the wrong time for flowers. Far fewer have analyzed the plant-plant interactions, such as spring ephemerals, that need time to grow before trees leaf out above them and block the sunlight. Our research group investigated, and again, this isn't my research group. This is I'm reading. I did not do this research.
Are you sure?
Their research group had investigated the mismatch between understory wildflowers and canopy trees around Concord, Massachusetts. Using historical observations recorded by Henry David Thoreau, the author of Walden, his classic about the life in the woods, we found that trees in Concord were more sensitive to spring temperatures than wildflowers were, and that this resulted in earlier tree leaf out that reduced available sunlight in the understory. This finding was an important first step, but we wanted to know whether these patterns persisted in other temperate forests in North America and across the Northern Hemisphere. Our latest study shows that the answer is yes. We found that as temperature warms, deciduous trees across eastern North America are advancing their leaf-out timing faster than native wildflowers are responding. A little aside here, they actually did this research in other areas of the world as well, and found that eastern North America was, while all of them were responding in some way, it seemed like eastern North America was a little bit faster. Back to the article. For example, am I at the right spot, Fran? Yeah.
Yes.
For example, during cooler springs with 24-hour average March and April temperatures of 41 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 5 degrees Celsius, trees leafed out 13 days after native wildflowers. This gave the flowers almost 2 weeks of full sunlight on the forest floor. However, during warmer springs with average temperatures of 58 degrees Fahrenheit or 15 degrees Celsius, trees leafed out only 10 days after native wildflowers. This gave the wildflowers about 25% less full sunlight during time during which to photosynthesize. As spring temperatures warm even further with climate change, we can expect wildflowers will have even shorter periods of full sunlight. This can mean sizable decrease in flowers' energy supply and ability to survive, grow, and reproduce. We also observed that trees and wildflowers in the warmer southern parts of their ranges advance their leaf out and flowering times faster, respectively, than those in colder northern locations. In these zones, we found greater timing differences between trees and wildflowers. This means the potential for phenological mismatch, where native wildflowers are more likely to be shaded out by trees, is greater in the southeast U.S. than in areas farther north. This was just so fascinating to me because, like the article stated, I'd read a lot of research and thought often about the animal plant impacts of this happening. We talk about birds and birds that are migrating. Well, a lot of their migrations have historically been timed up to when these food sources were going to be available or certain resources were going to be available. Same thing with hummingbirds and you think about monarch butterflies and all that kind of stuff. Even stuff like tent caterpillar. It's they're how when they become active tends to line up with bud break. And as things change, well, those interactions go on. And then the tent caterpillars are food for so many other things.
Yeah.
So now you have things that are moved around and there are things reacting at the same rate. And but yeah, I hadn't thought about plant to plant interactions
No,
at all.
That's and the first thing I thought about was the brilliant displays of spring ephemerals at Bowman's Hill. And I'm like, I wonder how historically that's changed, or I wonder if it is changing, or if they're noticing it, and it's, it makes me sad.
Yeah.
Actually,
Oh yeah.
It really, because that's not really a thing you can just fix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you, well,
you could daylight.
I should actually fill that in. One of the things that I cut out of here is their recommendations for some of this potentially is you do just that. You thin some of the forest canopy to make sure that there's more light going to be hitting the forest floor. And now the ephemerals aren't going to always respond because they might through other parts of the year they might want more shade. But you're just with how the sun is moving, they're going to get enough sunlight in different parts of the day, even though the other trees above them may be leafed out. But it's the one thing that's really something interesting to me, I should say, is that it was only a difference of 3 days. That's what they're finding. But what a big impact that 3 days makes when it's 10 to 13. That
is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's
when you break it down that way.
Yeah, it's 3 days. What could that matter? But when it's it's over 25% of or a little less than 25% of the sunlight that they would be getting otherwise, or they've needed. So, yeah, it's
that's a great article.
It was a really cool article, and this was, I forgot to mention, was published on PBS on their website. So, thank you, Brandolyn, for sending that over.
Oh, that was wonderful. That was wonderful.
I really appreciate it. So,
I didn't because I didn't get it, and now it's competing against me. But it's two great articles. We've been posting them on Monday on the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group, so make sure you check in on Monday and vote because. And of course, the choice is yours. All right, I went in I themed listener shout outs for me this week.
That, yeah.
So why don't we kick into that?
Listener shout out.
I will let you go first because I want to hear the interaction from the seed conference.
Yeah, so the first one, and I alluded to this earlier, it was Laura Fisher-Walter who approached me during one of the intermissions in our panel discussion and said she loved listening to the podcast. And actually, she told someone else about the podcast too, because then they told me how, I'm assuming this is the same person because they had a similar story.
Okay.
But it was Mark Feely from Ernst Seed was saying, I was talking to someone about, and they were saying how they love listening to your podcast in the greenhouse when they're doing stuff in the spring. And then Laura approached me and said, I love listening to the podcast when I'm in the greenhouse at the Tallgrass Prairie Center.
I love hearing that.
So, and I think she's I'm pretty sure she's in the Facebook group is what she said. I thought she'd written in too, but it might have just been through the Facebook group.
Okay.
Because I remember someone from the Tallgrass Prairie Center writing into us, and I told Laura, and then I never got to follow up with her at the conference. That's a place that I would love to have on as an episode too, because they're doing some really cool stuff, not in our area, in another area of the country, but it's super, super important
I would love
work that they're working on. So
I would love that.
So Laura, reach out to us or send someone to reach out to us so that we can coordinate that.
Thank you, Laura.
Then we had, I get this now. It's EC3PO. Which I get it. Okay. At first I was like, I don't know how to pronounce that. They left her a 5-star review and it was very complimentary. And it said that they were loving the show. And basically the headline, which is what I like, is that was less daunting. That's our motto. We don't want to be something that's, we can get in the weeds and very technical at times, but we try and make it approachable so that people can listen with no knowledge and pick up something and start their journey with native plants. And then this is maybe the biggest compliment I've ever got in my long, illustrious podcasting career. And it was from Bog Hobo, which is another fantastic review name. And they wrote, Tom and Fran are truly dynamic duo. They talk native plants like the Car Talk guys used to talk cars.
That is one of the best compliments that you could say. I was that made me smile from ear to ear.
So many family road trips growing up, listen to Car Talk. Couldn't wait for it to come on. We'd actually kind of almost plan out some of these trips so we could listen to Car Talk. So that was a giant compliment. So
that's huge. Thank you so much. Some great feedback, which I always love hearing. That's awesome. Yeah. So I wanted to go.
Don't garden like Fran.
I wanted to go in a.
You're supposed to say it back, Fran. They said
don't garden like Tom.
It was like, don't drive like my brother, and don't drive like my brother. Yeah, so
sorry,
it didn't work.
I missed my cue. I wanted to give shout outs to some of the feedback that we've gotten on A Native Plant Every Day with Tom and Fran. So we're just about to, tomorrow we're recording next week's, which will get us halfway through the season. So we're just about halfway through season 2. And we've gotten some 5-star reviews, and I want to say thank you to, Danny, which gave us the review. Let's see. I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm very happy that this is back for a second season. I love the information that's packed into a short amount of time. And Tom and Fran make me laugh in a good way. Also, this podcast led me to Native Plants Healthy Planet, which is also great. To Daniela317, who said, I love this concept, and the native plants are highlighted in short format. They present the information in a fun and entertaining way. I love learning about native plants and different ways to add them to the landscape. I have to give a shout out to Christiane, our producer, who is keeping us on track. That we're averaging like 16 minutes an episode, which we were not doing season 1.
Every single episode is almost the same length.
Yeah,
instead of some being 8 and some being 20, it's dialed in.
We've been really good. And then to Red Bee Bomb, Susie, upstate New York. I'm glad season 2 is here. Very entertaining and super educational. I feel like I need to take notes to remember everything. Luckily, I can listen again. Don't know if I have enough space in my yard to plant everything I'd like to. That's a good problem. Yeah. You'll find space. I'm sure there's a little bit more lawn you can take out there. Yep. So it's some great feedback on both podcasts, and we appreciate all of it. Thank you to everyone who listens. It takes the time to tell us that they listen. We were at the New Jersey Ag Society Gala.
Yes.
And someone came over to say they were a fan and didn't realize that they went to high school with my oldest son. At first. Like they didn't make the connection at first. That was like, I was wondering how many Chismars, and I did a little research and found out that Darian is your son, and we went to high school together.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so
Oh, very cool.
I thought that was very cool. So Jamie Specka, thank you for stopping by and saying hello.
I didn't know she listened to this. Oh, that's cool.
I didn't either. So it was nice talking to her about it, and it was funny because she's like, I didn't know this is what you did for a living. I'm like, I don't think any of my kids' friends knew what I did for a living. So, but thank you for everyone that reached out. It's not too often we have this, but we have a question.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want to have them answered immediately.
It's a simple question.
No, I didn't hear you. What was your question?
So I am going to play this question, and Tom, I need you to keep me on track because I may be in line to giving bad advice. I'm curious what your advice would be on this.
All right.
I've listened to it, but I know you haven't listened to it. So let me stop right there. I have to turn. Let's try this again.
Hi, Tom and Fran. My name is Anna, and I'm calling in from Washington, D.C. Our neighborhood is doing a big push this year to increase native plantings and get ourselves on Doug Townley's Homegrown National Park map, which we're really excited about. My big question is about soil, which I know you guys have been talking about lately. I expect a lot of the soil in our neighborhood yards is construction backfill. So my big question is how we should amend that soil to plant native plants. And for container gardeners or people starting seeds in pots, what is the best soil to use? Maybe what soil do you guys use at the nursery that we can recommend to folks here? Thanks so much.
Do you want to talk about seeds and pots? I think you may be a little bit more knowledgeable than me. Well, you're definitely more knowledgeable than me on that.
Yeah, with what we use at the nursery is basically a peat moss based mix. And we make our own, so we add sand and there's like some fertilizers and some other stuff. But we're growing things in a different way than if you were doing this at home and you're having a perennial. So you wanted to have like an orange coneflower in a pot. You probably wouldn't want to do it exactly the same way. It's going to be hard if you're doing a container production or a container garden. It's going to be hard to get away from peat moss. That's just what everyone tends to use. So, but there is honestly, I haven't tried this exact product, but I've played around with the paper a little bit. There's a company called Pit Moss that now has bags of their product in garden centers, and it's basically like part peat moss, and then part there's some perlite in there, and then part it's recycled newspaper and cardboard. So you have some, and for whatever, when we've tried it we've added the paper ourselves to peat moss. There's a little trial and error, but when we got it figured out, it did some really cool stuff with the plant rooting faster, and you had like a more vigorous root system, and then a more consistent quality of plant. But there's a lot of folks that are moving to that. Yeah. So that might be something you want to give a shot or try out. When I do stuff in containers, I basically grab all the spoils that kind of fall off in the little cracks of our conveyor belts and all that. I take that and I plant in that, and it works fine. It's kind of like a mishmash of pine bark and peat moss and sand, a couple of the core fibers sometimes. So a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah. But
now I will say, for as far as amending soils for planting on your property, and not everyone's going to agree with me, but personally, I don't amend the soil. And I know you're saying it's construction fill. It is at my house as well. I live in a planned development, with the exception of the back area that backs up to the natural area. It's all fill. Because I kind of am of the thought that once, if you add something or nutrients, once the roots deplete that or move out past that, you're still back to what you had. So eventually the plant has to deal with it, whether it's younger or older. What I typically do is dig a wider hole than necessary to decompact the soil so that the roots have an easier time. And I try to focus on plants that thrive in low nutrient soils, depending on what else is there. I mean, if you go through the community, there's plenty of plants surviving, even in the fill. I've had no issues with getting plants established in my property, knowing that that's what that is like. So that's my recommendation. I would do your own research as well, and it never hurts to get a soil test just to see what you're dealing with in case there's something really out of whack. I don't think it costs that much. You may need some help deciphering that soil test, but it doesn't. I think you can get a soil test for, I know in New Jersey, Rutgers is at $45.
Yeah, it's not a ton of money to do it. But yeah, that would probably be what I would recommend. Number one, is know what you're working with, and you can find folks that can kind of explain it to you as well, through your cooperative extension or through like master gardeners groups, those kind of things. They should be able to kind of explain that breakdown. But you do want to know what you're working with, especially if it's construction fill.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would also say my usual recommendation is, you don't need to amend it, because like Fran was saying, once it uses up all those nutrients, then it's going to be in normal soil anyway. So, so that's where I'd probably say something very similar.
Decompaction is a big deal.
Yeah.
So if you can dig that hole wider and give it a little bit, better area to get established.
I don't know how true this is, but someone had told me a former recommendation was, say you're going to plant a tree.
Yeah.
You would dig the hole 2 or 3 times as wide as this diameter of the tree, and then you would fill it with topsoil. But then this is what I heard, was what they were finding is the roots from the tree were just staying in the topsoil, and they would hit the native soils and then just start to spin around, and it would almost act like a big pot.
Basically, because it was just making it ideal conditions for 2 to 3 times as wide, but not really helping it establish. And they would find circling roots, things like that. It used to be. It's really weird how it's changed over the years. When I first started, it used to be 2 to 3 times as wide, 2 to 3 times as deep, backfill to grade.
Okay.
With amended soil.
Yeah.
And then put the plant in. Now I think the last time I read was you only dig as deep as grade, so that when you put the pot in or the plant in, it's at grade.
Yeah.
So it's a hard pan underneath, and then 2 times as wide. But I like 2 to 3 times as wide just to break it up a little bit. But they keep changing it. No, but they definitely saw like some of that like hard clay, and then it was just backfilled with peat moss.
Yep.
And it hits it and just circles.
Yeah.
You know, so you got to get those roots strong. They, you know, you want to build a little struggle for them to have a little bit healthier roots. You can't make it too easy.
Yep.
So that doesn't help either. But I have a question for you.
Okay.
For the sake of time.
Well, this is going to be my suggestion, what you're about to say.
Yeah, we're at an hour, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You want to save Grow Read a Book for the next one?
I do.
All right.
I will tease it
all right.
and say the book, I did read a book. Again, it's been a long time coming.
Because I have a feeling when we talk about this, it's going to be...
Oh, it's a big discussion.
Yeah, it's a big discussion.
And the book that I will talk about on the next Buzz is titled Some We Love, Some We Hate, Some We Eat, and it's all about humans' relationships with animals. It was by a professor, Hal Herzog, from Western North Carolina University. At least he was when he wrote this book. So
I'm looking forward to this one.
I thought it was pretty fascinating, so I'd love to tell you my thoughts about it and hear your thoughts as well.
I'm assuming in the next episode we're going to have less follow-up and more time.
I believe so, yeah.
So, but for a topic, we have been going back and trying to follow up on some of the things that we didn't know about to keep native plant every day, keep it lean and mean. Some of the things we don't know, we wanted to bring over to here. So you had asked the Chelsea Chop if it was applicable to everything, I think it was.
I forget exactly what I use it on a ton of stuff. I have my rule of thumb is if it's going to bloom before, basically if it's going to bloom before June, I usually don't touch it.
Okay.
Because I tend to do it around like Memorial Day.
Yeah.
So so it's going to bloom like mid-June, and if I see flower buds when I'm about to go do this, I don't leave them. But although I have experimented and then cut half of them and to see what would happen because it will delay flowering a little bit. But yeah, that's been what I've always read was the rule of thumb is you don't cut it if you see flower buds.
So, all right. So I took information from 2 separate websites, from Fine Gardening. They mentioned that the Chelsea Chop is a method of pruning that limits the size, controls the flowering season, and often decreases the flopping of a number of herbaceous perennials. And from the English Garden, what plants can I Chelsea chop? That question was asked. Robust mid to late summer flowering perennials benefit from the Chelsea Chop the most, so try it on perennials like Phlox paniculata, Heleniums, Asters, Echinacea, Solidagos, perennial sunflowers like Helianthus, and also Achillea. So I thought that was some great advice on which plants can benefit from that.
And that is a lot of the plants in my garden, and most of the ones I do that to. I do not do it to Penstemon digitalis, which is in my garden, because it's usually bloomed by the time I'm getting around to this.
Exactly.
But and I don't know if we described the Chelsea Chop. We did it in Native Plant Every Day, but it's basically, I guess you should listen to Native Plant Every Day.
Yeah,
and we'll talk
go back
about
and you have to listen to it. Now, if only I could remember which episode it was. You're going to have to listen to the whole season to listen to it. So I know I took Grow Read a Book away from you today, but I kind of brought this Take It or Leave It for you.
Oh,
so
I know
that
you
could
did,
talk about it. Like this is for you. So I take away and I give it. So it's rice hulls. And the reason why I ask is we've made a concerted effort to use rice hulls in our pots to help suppress weeds in a more natural way. And Tom had done a video on our social media talking about how we've made this transition and why. And there was actually some weird feedback, some negative feedback about how rice hulls are a bad thing. So my take it or leave it is rice hulls.
Yeah.
For use of weed suppression instead of pesticide or herbicide use.
I am, even after doing a little bit more research on this, I'm still on rice hulls. I think they're a benefit. And basically what we do with rice hulls at our nursery, and a lot of nurseries have moved to this. Not only is it a cost-saving measure, but you're using fewer pesticides, and then it actually has some other benefits to the plant as well, or herbicides, not herbicides as specific.
I did
pesticide.
the same thing, yeah.
But and it actually, because it's a lighter surface, it keeps the pot temperature cooler on top, because you have dark potting soil is going to attract the light is going to stick, and then basically heat that pot up or the root ball up faster. Where the lighter colored golden rice hulls kind of reflect more sunlight away and keep the root ball cooler, and so you actually, in theory, extend your growing season a little bit because the roots are getting too hot and stressed. And then it actually conserves water because you have a layer there that's, after you irrigate, the water percolates into that potting mix. And now as the sun hits it, it's not evaporating out. So you don't get that dry top layer like you would on a normal pot. So there's some of the benefits of it. I'm still fine using it because a lot of the research I guess I should say the questions we received about it, I wouldn't even say it was negative feedback per se. It was like just hey, you might want to look at this. Was that rice is used, or there's a lot of pesticide use on rice. And from what I found, the hulls are really the thing that has the most pesticide residue. Rice, when it grows, it has like a husk around it or this hull around it, and then so the inside usually didn't really get many pesticides on it. The part you eat, it's the hull. The hull around it is getting most of the pesticide. But through the treatment process, after the rice is harvested, they separate the hull from the I don't know, you call it a kernel? The rice kernel? I don't know, but the rice thing. Yeah. The part you eat is but once you separate that, it actually goes through a treatment process where it's like it's quasi cooked. I think it's like boiled in a sense, and that leaches a lot of the pesticide residue away, if not all of the pesticide residue away. From what I've read through both impartial or university research and like their other promotional materials from the company itself, because that's a valid concern. We're using this to reduce the pesticides we're putting on the plants, because it's doing weed suppression, so we don't have to go out there and spray them with an herbicide or use a granular herbicide to. In theory, we aren't quite there yet. We're still doing some of this, but we just started using these a couple of years ago, and we've had pretty good results so far. So, and then from a business standpoint, it saves us money because we don't have to spend all this money on expensive chemicals because we're getting a byproduct of some. It was going to get thrown out otherwise. And you said now nurseries get to use it.
The rice hulls are organic certified?
They're OMRI listed. Yeah. So, which means I don't know how the process is to get something OMRI listed, but I'm assuming there's some rigorous testing that it goes through that is saying, hey, this is, I know for if you want to join or be like a NOFA member and have your farm listed, there's a whole years and years of no pesticide use before you can actually like become certified organic. So I'm assuming if this is OMRI listed, there's some certification process that shows that that it's very limited, if not no pesticides on it.
So you taking it?
Oh yeah, I'm taking it.
I'm taking it too.
I've been really impressed with it so far.
I knew that was the answer.
A lot of nurseries are using it. It's I think it's a good thing. Any choice you have to make, there are drawbacks and there are positives too. This one, I think the drawbacks are minimal compared to the positive. The biggest drawback we've seen is it makes a huge mess. You get a big wind and all of a sudden stuff's all over the place, but it's aesthetic. Yeah. It's still serving its purpose and doing its job. I agree. So I'm taking it.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed listening to The Buzz. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Native Plants, Healthy Planet, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
Thank you, RJ Comer, for our Buzz theme music. Make sure you stream or buy RJ's music wherever you consume your music, or check out his Americana playlist on Pandora. I think you'll appreciate those. Follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at Native Plants _Healthy Planet, or at Pinelands Nursery, and also at YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. Thank you for the call into the question and comment line. You too can call us at 215-346-6189. I will repeat that, 215-346-6189. You can ask a question or leave a comment. And if we pick or I shouldn't say if we pick, we try to always play all the questions or comments on a future episode of The Buzz. We'll do our best to do that. And hey, thank you for joining the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group. A lot of new members, a lot of spam. Man, it's like 5 a day at this point, where Justin Bieber's dead, R.I.P. Justin Bieber, Simon Cowell's in a coma, and all those. I've never seen so many. Fortunately, I think we've managed to keep them all out. But thank you for all the real people that have joined the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group.
Yeah, so you can buy Native Plants Healthy Planet merch, like my son was wearing at the National Zoo, at our website, www.nativeplantshealthyplanet. There's a link right at the top that will bring you to some of these some of our T-shirt designs, iPhone designs, or iPhone case designs, aprons. There's all kinds of stuff on there. We do not keep any of the money that comes through this. We get a little PayPal notification when there's a lump sum in there, and then we take it and we give it to organizations that we feel are doing a really, really good job. So I'm going to I know there's a couple, I just showed you a design a couple weeks ago that I haven't released yet. So that's going to go up there pretty soon. I'll probably take down some of the less popular ones just so it doesn't crowd it. Yeah. That's called SKU rationalization. That is my job here at the nursery, is to
I like that.
figure out what is worth carrying and what's not.
And we have, someone did give us feedback, just the length of time it was taking to get some of these shirts, which some of this is, it's always been a little on the slower side, especially like over the holidays.
Yes.
Like I ordered 4 shirts and they shipped from 4 different places at 4 different times. And it took 2 to 3 weeks to get them. I know someone was well over, was it 2 months, 1 month?
Yeah, and it was something in particular was taking a long time, but I don't think it was anything crazy. It was just like one item, and I've been running around a little bit, so I can't say I said I would open or try and help a little bit, but I can't say I've gotten any headway. Okay. So if you haven't received it yet, please let me know. Still,
I think their time to receive it was early April. Okay. So I don't think they've received it yet. Hopefully they get it at that point.
But yeah, basically with this service, and I've been looking at a handful of others too, we don't warehouse any of the T-shirts. It's basically I put the design on, and there's other printers that go and take care of it. So when you order, it's custom printed just for you. But every once in a while, it hits a little snag. Most of the stuff we've gotten has taken between like 2 weeks.
2 to 3 weeks, I'd say, yeah.
So it's not like Amazon where you're getting it in 2 days, because this stuff it's not
custom,
made.
Custom print it for you. Yeah.
So the other thing we always ask you to do is please subscribe. You can to our podcast and leave a 5-star review if you can. If you do a little write up with that review, I'll give you a little shout out here on our Buzz episode. So, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, really wherever you consume your podcast. So yeah, with that, thank you everyone. I'm Tom. I was supposed to put a secret in here.
I don't have a secret.
My wife was just telling me a story from the zoo about, I probably should have saved the shirt one. That would have been a good one here. But my son, he's talking a lot. He hit a certain age and it's just, he didn't shut up. And she was just telling me a story about at the zoo, there's like a big bee-themed playground, honeybee themed, but still bee-themed nonetheless. And he met another little boy who was a little older than he was, and they were talking, and she said, "Oh, he's very good at introducing himself. He like reaches out for handshakes."
Oh, nice.
So he's like, "Hi, my name's Graham Kinesic. What's your name?" And like sticks out his hand to shake, and then the kid's like, "Oh, my name's Jack." And Graham looks at him and says, "What's your real name?" This is like a little 3-year-old conversation, and the boy's like, "My real name is Jack." Then my wife says he looked up at her and then looked back at him questioningly and said, "Okay." And then they started. Jack said, "My name's Jack, and this is my mommy." And Graham said, "That's my mama right here. That's my mama." Then they started running. He tagged them. Graham tagged them and started running circles around his mom and saying, and then they were going back and forth saying, "I'm chasing you. No, I'm chasing you." Just running circles around. So it's a really fun age.
That's a good age.
But yeah, that was I couldn't stop laughing when I went home for lunch and heard that story. So
What's
Now I shared it with you.
real name?
What's your real name?
I'll find a way to use that at some point. All right, I guess.
Well, all right. Well, that's it. Thank you, everyone. I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Thanks again, everyone. We have a guest on the next episode, so make sure you tune in. And until then, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.